100 Yards Over the Rim is a very simplistic story, not as grand as some of this show's famous titles, but I must say, it's a far better episode than most give credit for. We follow a group of pioneers back in the Old West traveling to California in order to begin a new life and prosper in a land they can call their own. However, the journey has grown overwhelming for them. The pilgrims are tired and weary from weeks of wandering. The desert is, as always, a merciless burden upon Twilight Zone characters. And even worse, the lead pilgrim's son is dying of a fever. So yeah, they're pretty screwed. The leader of the pioneers is Uncle Ben from the Spider-Man trilogy, and he does a darn good job at playing this reluctant adventurer, struggling with the chains of command. If you keep up with our channel, Uncle Ben was last seen turned into a dummy by his ghost toy, but luckily this time he gets to show off wider range as he's a pilgrim now, hoping to save his colonists. Cliff Robertson plays such a charming character, as you do grasp his grim sitch and hope he comes out okay. He really throws his all into this, making what would have been a generic hero super deep. The group pit stops for a while to catch their breath, but Uncle Ben vows to help out by searching overhill for any helpful directions that can hopefully aid them in their journey towards something. But as he goes 100 yards over the rim,
Oh, that's why they call it that.
Uncle Ben crosses through a time portal, entering the 60s. Yep, we have a Twilight Zone tale that's a mixture of a desert episode, an Old West episode, and a time travel episode combined. All the classic setups finally morphed into one story. Uncle Ben quickly finds himself trapped in the future as his group vanishes, and he soon walks the newfound roads, still scouring for signs of life. Uncle Ben is eventually helped out by a nice couple who works at a Denny's diner. From the oh-so-legendary Will the Real Martian Please Stand Up?
It's true! I am cheap!
Where they inform the pilgrim that he's in modern day. Won't sugarcoat it, there's a lot of fish out of water scenes in this story, as Uncle Ben gazes upon the weird future tech and odd devices which are normal to us. It goes on for a while, and is sadly my only complaint. Uncle Ben looks at future stuff, interacts with the odd objects around him, and asks multiple questions to the couple about what's going on here. In a modern lens, it might cause some folks to feel the episode dragging out for a tad too long. But unlike some episodes where I usually hate this stuff, there is a point behind it. I genuinely love how surreal this episode's imagery is. There are some truly insane shots and visuals in this, which totally feel like the Twilight Zone. It's so enchantingly bizarre watching an old cowboy walking along the desert road or passing by ominous sights, intrigued by this whole new world to him. For an episode which clearly had a low budget, you will at least remember what happens in it. The plot itself is fairly straightforward, as after many fish out of water bits and Uncle Ben's 20 questions, he finally gets back to his mission and pleads for directions from the couple, where they reveal that he's actually not too far from the local hot springs. However, the couple assume Uncle Ben's a crazy homeless guy suffering from heat stroke and don't believe his time travel story. They call a doctor to help him, but he determines that Uncle Ben's fine. This leads to the doctor inadvertently giving Uncle Ben medicine which heals fevers, and as you can guess, he pockets it, realizing that it totally won't be important for later. This honestly paves the way for where I think this episode gets great. Uncle Ben studies some modern textbooks and discovers that his son grew up to be an influential doctor who invented a lot of modern medicines which saved lives, and one day his ancestor will be Spider-Man.
I have a father. His name was Ben Parker.
The old pioneer soon believes that his time jump wasn't pure chance. but in fact, he thinks he was sent here for a reason. He was given the opportunity to visit the future so he can use this knowledge to save his family.
I may be crazy, or the world may be turned upside down, but I know that I've been put here for a reason.
But the coppers come to escort him to a health center where Uncle Ben busts out of this restaurant and runs back over the rim. I just love how insane this gets. This episode literally has a cowboy being chased by modern police cars across the desert hills. That visual is so crazy, I love it. Uncle Ben is victorious and does the time warp again, where he uses his future knowledge to the pioneers' benefits. He tells them directions to that hot springs where they can settle. He gives his depressed buddies hope again and uses the modern medicine he held on to heal his boy. Thus, Uncle Ben secures the timeline, ensuring that Spider-Man will still be born. The twist ending is kinda weak, as we cut back to the Denny's couple, where they examine Uncle Ben's old hunting rifle before it suddenly ages over 100 years and decays, making them see that he was a time jumper after all. I believe this scene is meant to imply that time has been restored, as Ben is back in his own world, and everything he left here no longer exists as it was, since with his mission complete, time is resetting back to normal, mending the continuum and fixing all the bizarre stuff that occurred. Confusing, but fun. I won't lie, this episode was a bit slow and overly simple that I was this close to giving it a silver skull, but then something magical happened. I actually found this episode's ending to be heartwarming and much deeper than I thought it would be. Uncle Ben's time travel hijinks truly do serve the story, as his brief trip in the future refuels his sense of hope and inspires him to obtain that bright world he saw. Not long after Uncle Ben returns to his weary travelers, he gives this inspiring speech to pump them up, where he praises them because their struggle and long bleak trail is not all for nothing. They are the people who make the first steps leading towards a greater tomorrow, as the long journey may be hard, but they're about to accomplish great achievements by being the brave ones seizing that opportunity. In small words, their life's goals are worth something, because every little thing they do is leading towards a fantastic end game. In Uncle Ben's words, their lives do have a purpose. That is shockingly profound and very upbeat for this show. Watching this episode genuinely made me happy over the ending and inspired me with such a small yet deep message about how all your hard work will eventually give you a positive future and does make a difference. That's just so wholesome and a nice call to action. Seeing this also made me understand the exact reason why I despise Jordan Peele's diarrhea piss of a reboot. Because while the Twilight Zone is well known for its dark, twisted endings, the Peele era neglects one huge element: hope. The Twilight Zone is not solely about the dark side of humanity, but also the good side to life too. While we all cherish the horror and harsh messages of this show, the 2000s reboots forgot that the show was also inspirational. In Peele's Dumpster Fire, it's all about how much life sucks, how people are ugly, and that the world's cruel. It's just so bleak and stomach-churning. Serling's era has some of that too, but there's an equal amount of how people can better themselves. That life isn't just suffering, but we can work to make it better. Our hero and his pioneers are at the end of their rope, losing the will to go on, thinking this trip is all a lost cause. But this life-changing adventure into the Twilight Zone rejuvenates the protagonist's worldview. He sees that their efforts have meaning, that what you think is a small step towards achieving your your dream does have a greater impact than you thought, and your future is worth it if you're willing to fight for it. That made me appreciate this episode, and heck, even this series a whole lot more, because of how hard that hits. So for that alone, I can grant this journey a gold skull. It barely scores that on account of the slow moments and a few too many fish out of water shenanigans, but it more than enough makes up for that. Uncle Ben's actor is just as great as ever as this struggling leader. The effects are quite trippy, the visuals are stunning, the Twilight Zone has a ton of fun with this weirdness, and the ending is quite optimistic, with a deep motivational message on how we all play a part in this little universe of ours. I cannot highly recommend this episode enough, as it's another classic gem which has held up supremely well for the saga, and offers us a hopeful mood in a dark hour. 100 Yards Over the Rim is another underrated chapter, which fans can admire from the history book of The Twilight Zone.
There's a whole lot on the other side of that rim, for there'll be highways and many new things. A whole new land. You know what, Charlie? It was people like us. We made it happen.
The Twilight Zone.